Hey John, this video is brought to us by headphones.com. Okay, see you later.
Today we're in Berlin's Tiergarten. It's a bit like Berlin Central Park. And we're going to be talking about Bluetooth and true wireless IEMs. Now, the last time I covered true wireless IEMs was about 2 years ago, and I made that video, and then pretty much straight afterwards I went back to using wired IEMs because wired IEMs sound better. Now, one of those Bluetooth true wireless IEMs was Sony's WF-1000XM3. And these Sony are good. I like them. I don't love them, which is probably why I went back to wired IEMs. However, when Sony announced the XM4 earlier this year, I thought, yeah, just more of the same, not going to bother with it. But then I read about what Sony had done in improving their true wireless IEMs to the Mark IV version. So yeah, I bought a pair of the XM4, and as you can see pretty much straight away, Sony have drastically reworked the ear shell. They've also redone the tips, although I'm using some final audio tips here that I got with my Campfire IEMs because this particular tip fits me the best, and it's super important to get a proper seal. And you can also see that they've redone the case. It's much smaller if we put them side by side. This one is much smaller. With the XM4 they've extended the battery life, and a nice touch is they drastically improve the packaging. They reduce the size, and I think it's all recycled or upcycled paper. Actually, I do have it with me. Hang on a sec. Yeah, look, recycled paper packaging, which I think in these times is a nice touch. You don't need a big box. I can't stand small gear that comes in big boxes. It drives me crazy. There's no need for it. Now, these smaller earpieces, for me, produce a much, much better fit than the original XM3. Yeah, WF-1000XM3, WF-1000XM4, what a mouthful. Anyway, yeah, so these fit better in the ear, they produce a better seal, and I think actually that the passive seal that we get with the right tip, as I have here, or the right fitting tip, or the best fitting tip, I think that does more for keeping out external noise than the active noise cancellation that is inside this earphone. I'll talk more about that in a bit later on. But getting a passive seal, getting a proper seal inside the ear is super important, even with active noise cancelling earphones like these. But still, as good and tidy as these ear shells are, wearing these Sony, not quite as comfortable as a pair of Campfire wired IEMs, not really. I can wear these for about an hour or so before they start to kind of really bug me, whereas I can wear my Campfires all day, not even worry about them, not even really think that they're there. But yeah, after some time, these make their presence known. So this is not an all-day listening earphone. This is just for kind of short bursts here and there. So what's really interesting about these and the noise cancelling and filming here is that there is a road behind me here, and putting these in with no music playing, and it strips away most of the road noise. So I have to keep one earpiece in minimum so that I can show you how we adjust the noise cancelling inside Sony's Headphones Connect app. There is a wind reduction mode, which is okay when you're walking, but it doesn't really do very much when you're cycling around the park. Now, I think, just take this out, I think the noise cancelling on these earphones is excellent, especially because I've got the passive seal in place in the first place. But one thing to notice is that noise cancellation in earphones like these doesn't do very much for the mid to high frequencies. It's mainly low frequencies. And I tested this when I went to my local cafe the other day, and I was testing the noise cancelling, ironic, whilst in the queue, and I noticed that the sort of the low end rumble of the environment, the sort of low frequencies were wiped out by the noise cancelling, but the high frequencies I could still hear the clatter of cutlery and of cups and saucers and things like that. But it took it down a bit, so it's much better when there's more of a constant noise, but it's still impressive. I mean, I just think this is quite incredible that we can get noise cancelling down to an earpiece that's this small. Like, what the hell? It's amazing when you come to a park like this. It's a big park. You think you can get away from the city's noises, but you really can't. The road's over there. They're repairing a statue over there, and there's some kind of cleaning dumpster machine over there. So we're surrounded by noise, even though this park is very beautiful. Just a word about Bluetooth codecs. So the XM4 Sony load in LDAC as well as AAC. Remember, the XM3 were AAC only. So I did all of my listening with 2 Android phones, both of which had LDAC enabled. Now, before we come to the listening to the music part of this video, I want to say a word about phone calls, because phone calls with the new Sony are just a little bit disappointing. So I speak to Jana a couple of times a week, and we speak for probably several hours about all sorts of YouTube related stuff. And she tells me that the Sony with phone calls sound a little bit unnatural, a bit processed, and not as good as my $20 KZ ZST IEMs that I use with, they're wired and they have an inline microphone here. They're just not as good. So if you're expecting the Sony to kind of work miracles for phone calls, no, I don't think so. So if we play something like Billy Bragg's Don't Try This at Home, it's possibly Billy Bragg's most sort of contemplative album. The great thing about the Sony is that we get a fantastically detailed presentation and amazing layer separation. And please understand my emphasis here, because it really is just incredible. And it means that with that Billy Bragg album, you can kind of, oh, there's Kirsty MacColl doing backing vocals over there, or there's Johnny Marr's guitar over there, or I can hear Michael Stipe really clearly. I just think the Sony sound absolutely fantastic, so much better than the XM3. But it doesn't stop there, because if we play something like Recondite's Theatre 2 EP, we can really hear just how good the bass is on these Sony. And I think the bass reproduction on these noise cancelling IEMs is some of the best bass I've heard from any IEM. It's bouncy, it's squishy, see, look, noise. It's so cleanly delineated. You can follow any bass line in any music, but I think it's probably best suited to modern music. So hip hop, R&B, and in the case of the Recondite, kind of melodic big room techno. I cannot stress enough how great the bass reproduction is on these earphones. It's a wow, it really is. And I guess it's a wow because of the money that we have to spend. Because a pair of WF-1000XM4 sells for €277. We don't need to worry about any portable player or dongle DAC. We can just connect it to any phone as it stands. So any iPhone, any Android phone. But remember, With the iPhone, it's AAC only, and I think the Android phones just shade the iPhone in terms of sound quality because of that codec difference and the bandwidth difference between those codecs. But the Sony aren't perfect. I mean, what is? So if we play New Order's Substance, I think they can sound a little bit reticent at times. So Blue Monday, I think, could do with a little bit more punch. And I think there could be a kind of a keener leading edge on the guitars that drive Ceremony forward. Of course, people will want to know how the Sony compare to Apple's AirPods Pro. So this is the in-ear Pro version with the noise cancelling. I was never a big fan of the original AirPods. I just thought they sounded very papery, a bit dry, they lacked low end, but they were extremely comfortable, which made them great for phone calls. In fact, they were as good as my wired headphones for phone calls, as Jana told me anyway. And I thought they were really good for podcasts as well, because even with these, even these being in-ear and having like different tips inside, getting the right fit is important. The seal isn't quite as good as the Sony. So really the Sony, they give us a better seal. They sound, I think, much better than these, but they're not as comfortable. I can wear the AirPods Pro for much longer than I can the Sony, which is a little bit frustrating actually, because it is, I guess, yeah, swings and roundabouts. If you want maximum comfort for the longest time, you want the Apples, and then if you want best sound quality, just pulling them out of my pocket magically, you want the Sonys. How do they differ sound-wise? Well, I think the Sony have a much punchier bass, they have more abundant dynamics, and on that Recondite EP, the Sony definitely give us more heft, more weight to the sound than the Apples do. And the top end, I think, is where the biggest difference lies. The Sony, they just sound cleaner and sweeter, whereas the Apple AirPods Pro can sound a little bit too crisp sometimes, which can work well for tracks like New Order's Ceremony and also Accident Waiting to Happen on Don't Try This at Home by Billy Bragg. But it can be a little bit too insistent, certainly compared to the Sony. And because the seal is better on the Sony, it feels like we're sealed into this world, this sort of our own little world, our own little musical world, much more than we are when we wear the Apple AirPods Pro. At least that's the way I hear it. And yeah, these are big differences actually. I mean, I know normally I make videos and emphasizing the small differences, but no, the differences between these two sets of true wireless IEMs, they're quite significant in all respects. So at the intersection of the different parts of the Tiergarten is the Großer Stern, which is this enormous roundabout that hosts the Siegersäule, which is a big, I guess they call it the victory column. It's pretty loud here. It's a good place to be pulling out some noise cancelling earphones. But in terms of sound quality for music, it isn't all one-way traffic in favour of the Sony. I think the Apple AirPods Pro are excellent at capturing the air of a recording, or the space in which it was recorded, if it was recorded in the space. They're really good at that. And I think overall, the AirPods Pro split the difference between the original AirPods and these new Sony XM4. But I wouldn't buy the AirPods if I were only rocking an Android phone. I have an iPhone, which I do use sometimes, but if I only had an Android, I would definitely pick the Sony because the integration of the software is a little bit better on the Android side. And besides, with the AirPods, the way that the iPhone interacts with the AirPods, especially when you first pair them, is far, far better than an Android phone. It's like the AirPods were made for an iPhone and just work with an Android phone. So there are software advantages to either, but I think AirPods with an iPhone, the case is much stronger. Now there is one downside to both models, and that is a slight artificial sort of metallic tinge to acoustic instruments. So if we play something like Billy Bragg's version of Dolphins from that Don't Try This at Home album, it just sounds a little bit unnatural sometimes. It's not a deal breaker, it really isn't, but I think this is the weakness of Bluetooth IEMs, true wireless IEMs, and in this respect I think this is where wired headphones definitely have the edge. They definitely step us further forward with their more natural presentation of music. So if you're a classical listener, I'm not so sure that Bluetooth IEMs are going to do it for you. But for people with more modern, contemporary music tastes, absolutely, definitely. But I would say that the artificial tinge is less present on the Sony when using LDAC than on the AirPods, which only pair over AAC. So this is a pair of Campfire Audio Holocene. That is a very, very psychedelic carry case. Obviously they are wired headphones. And when I use these with my LG V40 smartphone, which has a very good sounding headphone socket on it, I do notice a more natural sound. It really is more natural. But, the bass response on these, the low end articulation cannot match the Sony, no matter what I pair these with. I mean, there's only 3 balanced armature drivers in here. They're not a bass heavy earphone. They're not really designed to be that way. For that, we'd look to the Mammoth. So I think on detail retrieval, the Sony are just as good as these. The Campfire are better with the more organic, natural presentation, especially of acoustic instruments. But on layer separation and low-end articulation, the Sony win out. These sell for around 500 euros, so you know the price differential is there. But don't forget, with these you need to have a dongle DAC or a phone or a portable player to drive them. But the convenience factor of Bluetooth headphones is unassailable, especially in the age of face masks, where sometimes, you know, like if I put a face mask on, I have to make sure that I do this before I put my wired earphones in, because if I need to take a wired earphone out for a moment, I take the mask off and it just gets complicated. So I think face masks tend to complicate the wired headphone setups that we have, whereas with true wireless, we don't have that problem. And the other thing about the Sony that I really like, I mean, you can, if you put them in, and if we're playing music, they have some controls, you know, so if I tap this side, it's play pause, and then again, and then this side, there's a little woman that lives inside the earphones that tells me that noise cancelling is now on. If I tap it again, she tells me that ambient sound is now activated. And if I tap it again, she tells me that noise cancelling is back on. So you can rotate between noise cancelling and ambient sound this side and play pause this side. So the convenience here is also pretty damn cool. And that's kind of the point, isn't it? Is that with true wireless IEMs like the Sony, we get active noise cancellation. which you cannot get. It's not possible to get that from wired IEMs. And we don't have to worry about which DAC, which amp we are using to drive our earphones, because the DACs and amps and the Bluetooth receiver are built into each earpiece. God, you need noise cancellation even here, don't you? It's quite amazing actually. We were filming some B-roll a few moments ago back here, and you can probably hear there's some kind of machine, I think it's cutting grass or doing something or cleaning behind us here, and putting both the Apple earphone in and the Sony with no music playing. It completely wiped out that sound. I think that's pretty cool. We can't get that with wired earphones. And the comparison between true wireless IEMs and wired IEMs kind of reminds me of the passive versus active loudspeaker conversation, because in here we have DACs and amps just like we would have in active loudspeakers. We also have a streaming input, the Bluetooth receiver, just like streaming active loudspeakers. And what that means is that Sony can tune the amplifier's output, because in there, to the driver to correct for the driver's natural anomalies. And it will do that using DSP. So just after the Bluetooth input, the Bluetooth signal will come in to the earphone, it will be corrected in DSP, that will then be sent along to the DAC, and then along to the amplifier, and then along to the driver. So it's the whole thing in one box, just like a streaming active loudspeaker. And even though at the moment, earphones like these Sony use lossy compression codecs for the Bluetooth transmission, I don't think it will always be that way. I mean, we could think about a year down the line. I'm not one for pontificating about what might happen in the future, but aptX Lossless is coming. Maybe that will, create the final bridge that we need, so we don't trade anything on the input signal. But even though we do lose a little bit using LDAC or AAC, I think the hardware is more important. I think, Sony's ability to be able to correct the driver's frequency response using DSP gives us more than Bluetooth takes away. Seeing all these dogs makes me want to get a dog. They're amazing. Anyway, if you like this video, please hit the like button down below. If you like my attitude towards high-end audio in the portable audio space that also encompasses Bluetooth solutions, true wireless earphones, then please subscribe to the channel. That's also down here. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. Is it the true wireless police? Come to revoke my audiophile license.